Hey, what's up, YouTube? Look at that face. Look at that face. Well, here we are. I'm going to have another rant because, that's what I do. We've got a bit of Jeremy Vine again. And let's have a guess. Can you guess what they're talking about today? Their first topic? I'll give you a guess. Go on.
Nope. We're going to be talking about vaccine passports very shortly.
Shock horror.
And critics say that if you say, okay, no pub, no theatre, no football match without a vaccine, there's certain people won't be able to get in, and it's not fair. Now, obviously, if you're pregnant and you can't have the vaccine, you need to have a card saying that, and you'll get in. But what about this? What about if you don't like needles? Now, does that count? I did a little tweet on this. Have a look here. Just raised on Radio 2. Is fear of needles a...
I already watched a little bit of this and rewound back, obviously. But yeah, what I would say is Jeremy's pushing right at this moment that, as you can see, here's Jeremy Vine on Twitter. He's put out his Twitter poll with 12,000 votes. 87% of people don't think being scared of a needle is a valid reason not to have COVID. But just remember, hey, his go-to here is Twitter. Just remember, it's going to be important later. Okay?
Valid reason not to have the COVID vaccine. And look at the result here. 87%, nearly 9 out of 10, saying it's absolutely not valid. Sarah.
Some people have a real terror of needles. I think a lot of people say, oh, I hate needles, I hate needles. I have to do blood tests on people all the time because I always get the ones who are going to faint if the nurse takes their blood, for instance. And I get the ones where the nurse says, they say they're really terrified.
Is it always men?
It's not always men.
Bloody hell, Jeremy.
Mostly.
Why is Jeremy so anti-men?
Because
he's a soy boy.
Quite often.
Yeah.
But I have had patients. I had a patient, for instance, whose family, their son was engaged to a wonderful young lady from Zaire, and they said that they couldn't go to the wedding because he was too terrified of him.
Oh, patient confidentiality there, Dr. Sarah. You just told the world that you treat a man whose wife isn't. What are you doing?
Wow.
And that's pretty.
And what do you think? Is needle phobia a genuine reason not to be vaccinated?
I think it's a genuine fear, as Sarah just said, and we have to try and understand people's fears. But no, I think in this case, just you have to work harder at distracting. Because those needles are so fine now. I didn't feel my...
Poor Anne, why is she missing the point? People's fear of injection isn't because they think the flipping needle is like, I don't know, half an inch wide. It's the fact of having an injection. I think you're missing the point, Anne. I'm so scared.
Vaccinated at all, and I was prepared to. So you've got to get over it. It's this important.
And Diamante.
You've got a bit of this, Storm.
I have a bit of a fear over needles. I can't watch it when it's on a.
Oh yeah,
show,
fair play.
TV.
Storm corrects her here actually. Fair play to her.
Blood test. I can't look. I don't want to see the needle before it goes in. But I kind of send myself to a happy place. I can almost just grin and bear it and get over it. So I will get the vaccine, absolutely. Telling me that you can't feel it doesn't really help because my fear is something to do with somebody else having control of what's coming in and coming out and going into my body.
How does your boyfriend feel, or your fiance feel about that then, Storm? Sorry, that was crude, wasn't it? She doesn't. She likes to have control over things going in and out of her body. So she's bossy then. Tells her boyfriend.
It really, really freaks me out. So I don't know if it's completely an excuse. I think if you had a fear of
let's ask Lizzie. What do you think, Lizzie? Is it valid to say I couldn't get vaccinated because I'm scared?
Well, I think I would say I'm scared of needles, but I can't move my.
Poor Lizzie. You can't say you're scared of needles. You wouldn't have had any Botox, you liar. Come on.
But to be honest, look, I'm being straight. People do have a genuine fear of needles. I've actually seen a grown man faint at the sight of it, and there's a real phobia. And I do think you've got to take it into account. And if they don't want the vaccine because they're scared of needles, you've got to think about that. can't force it, and people have a genuine phobia.
When last time I had a flu vaccine, which is pre-COVID, I mean.
What? Jeremy's in his 50s, isn't he? I don't know. I'm like, what age do they start offering out bloody flu vaccines then? I thought it was only for the elderly. Jeremy, you classed as elderly now? What are they doing? They reducing like the age of the elderly now? What? I don't know. Maybe he's got some underlying condition then.
I went
Apart
to some place
apart from
on
being
the
a
high
soy
street,
boy.
and this woman said, "Are you going to be okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'll sit down because I do feel a little bit faint." So I don't enjoy the experience, you know. And the flu vaccine's got a wider needle, I think. And anyway, as I sat down, I noticed this hole in the wall in the plaster, just down at sort of ankle level.
Fucking Jeremy's boring.
You hear what you're saying, Storm. It's the principle of it. What I would say is, I think people who come to me to take to do an injection are mad because, frankly, the nurses do so many more, and they're so skilled.
Yeah,
They are.
I would always go for the nurse because
Yeah.
that's what they do day in, day out.
Could you not use, this is a medical question, gas to knock them out?
I think that would be a bit extreme, but we would certainly, if somebody's got a real phobia, with any
Imagine
phobia,
that.
they genuinely take over your life. Needle phobias are dreadful if you're ill, but the rest of the time they're okay. You know, if you've got somebody who's got a phobia of spiders, a phobia of something, agoraphobia, claustrophobia, it can take over their life, and actually there is CBT for it. It doesn't always work, it's not quick, but it can be really effective. So I would say let's go for that first.
Okay, tell us what you make of the stories we're discussing later. Storm.
Okay, well, we are kicking off talking about COVID, and we're talking about COVID vaccination passports.
Here we
Should
go.
they be made compulsory is what we're asking. Kate here doesn't think so. She says, I'm an ICU nurse, and I know
Kate.
well how badly COVID can be, but forcing a vaccine on people isn't the answer. Everyone should have the right to decide what they put in their bodies and shouldn't suffer sanctions.
Fair play, Kate. Fair play.
Then we are talking.
Would vaccine passports be compulsory for everyone? 0207 862 2222. The Prime Minister has said there is going to be a role for vaccine certificates, and reports suggest now that they could be used not just in pubs, theatres, football matches, workplaces, you name it. Under the plans, people would have to show proof of getting a COVID jab, recently testing negative, or having antibodies after recovering from the virus. Supporters argue this could kickstart the economy and allow restrictions to be eased sooner. And you must have a listen to this. This is the CEO of Pimlico Plumbers talking last night.
We need to make sure and roll out.
Bloody hell, what's Rod Stewart doing? Rod Stewart's pushing the flipping vax now. What? Bloody hell, Rod.
The situation.
Oh no, it's that Pimlico plumber prat, isn't it?
About it. No more pussyfooting about with it.
Oh, pussyfooting about it.
Let's get a government scheme out there.
Yeah.
Let's get everybody
Yeah,
working
it's
on it
jab
as soon as
everyone, man.
possible. No more sort of pretending we might have it, we might not have it. It's the only way that we are being offered to get out of the current situation.
So,
My advice: boycott Pilco plumbers. Pimlico, whatever they call. Sorry, Pilco. I was thinking of Pillock. Pillock plumbers. That's about right. Do we really want to see the whole? I won't make you watch the whole. Got their jabometer thing going up. Look, we won't. I won't subject you to that. Back in a sec.
So do you think Charlie Mullins has got this right, Lizzie?
No, I don't actually. I think they're going to be useful, but they should be compulsory. What we're going to have are like landlords being like police. They're wanting to custom in. They're not going to be policing everyone. I just can't see it. I mean, look, let's be honest. A landlord cannot have you in because he doesn't like the look of your face. You know, you may have had that, Jeremy, in the past.
Oh, what'd they do that to Lizzie for?
Lizzie. But to make it compulsory,
Jeremy don't go pubs because he'd get beaten up.
And look, it's going to be useful. We all want our freedom, as I say, but I don't think you can force it. I really don't, and I don't think we're going to be able to do it. What, in a football match? You know, the crowds, a landlord's going to take the time. They're on their knees at the minute. My local landlord, I just saw, you know, the other day. It actually, you know, I don't know how they're going to reopen. I mean, they really are on their knees. They want people back in. Are they going to be policing everyone before they order a pint? I don't think so.
Well, if they have a breakout
Well
in
said,
the pub
Lizzie.
when they've got it crowded, they'll wish they did have vaccine certificates, I suspect. What do you think, Anne?
Oh, God.
Well, yeah, I agree with Lizzie in that I don't think it needs to be compulsory because I think the market will find its own level on this.
What? Okay. So what Anne thinks is that basically, yeah, people will be forced into it. That's what she's saying, isn't it? Am I wrong there? Because that's what it sounded like to me.
If I were running a business, especially like a plumbing business where I employ plumbers who are going into people's homes, I can see that if you were able to boast that all of my guys have had the vaccine and will be able to prove it to you. That...
Okay, so look at that. So Anne Cubic Zirconia here agrees with Charlie Mullins then.
And that's a business plus for him. And if I were running a restaurant, I might say the same thing.
Business plus, well, it's up to each in their own, but with him coming out and saying people shouldn't even be allowed to walk down this. I noticed how they cut that out, actually. Didn't play that whole bit in there, did they? Where he said about people shouldn't have it to even be walking down the street. Or did I miss it? I don't listen when he starts talking a twat, but Anne supports that then, does she?
Clients with a vaccination passport or proof of a recent test, a negative test. I'm only welcoming them for the moment. I can sort of see business creating its own level on this. By July the 31st, if the government does manage to reach its target of vaccinating all adults, then you could start to think about other businesses and making it compulsory for certain travel companies, airlines, something like that. But at the moment, I don't see the need to make it compulsory because I think business will find its own way.
Sarah?
Business will find its own way.
I've always been in favour of people having choice. If I've got a patient, I have had patients in the past who had cancer, who decided that they didn't want treatment. I didn't agree with that, but they weren't hurting anybody else by doing it, and I had to respect.
So notice there, she's teed it up, hasn't she? She was in support of people having choice because she's had experience of cancer patients not wanting their treatment, and she respected that because they're not hurting anyone else. Now I'm confused because won't the people who've had the vaccine be now protected against catching COVID? Isn't that what a vaccine does? So why would someone refusing it be a risk to other people? There'd only be a risk to other people who aren't vaccinated, surely. I don't know. I don't know. YouTube, am I allowed to ask that question?
Their decision. The big difference here is that, breathing is an offensive weapon if you are infected with COVID.
You what? What? Breathing is a deadly weapon? Is she for real? Oh my God. Fucking hell, Dr. Doom.
We're not talking about just vaccines, and I think that's really important because, as you so rightly say, there are pregnant women who can have it but aren't routinely being invited to have it because the tests haven't been done on them. But actually the risks to pregnant women, especially in the last 3 months of
Dr. Jarvis, is she ignoring then that woman that was pregnant? I think she was a nurse or something. She was a medical professional. She was pushing people, pregnant women actually, saying, yeah. And I'm going to have it, I'm having it. And then, was it a week later she miscarried? You're not going to talk about that one though, Dr. Sarah? Dr. Sarah! No, she's gone.
Are much higher than they are at other times. But if you can have an antibody test which proves that you've got antibodies having been infected, and a lateral flow test, which is the rapid test, which isn't as accurate as the PCR test, but which picks up the people who are most infectious, you've got a range of options.
I wonder whether we'll end up just expecting people to do it themselves.
So Sarah's basically saying,
workplaces having their own rules and
jab or
having
test.
Their own rules, and it'll be chaos, won't it?
Isn't this depressing?
It could be chaos. Well, I hope not. Look, we all want our freedom back. Look, we've been in prison, it feels like, for a year.
Yeah, stand up, take your freedom back.
Normal. But, as the doctor said, we've got freedom. We have our own choice. We can't be forced into doing anything. And, I just want, hopefully, it be done in the right way. And I think in your own business how to do things. And, Pimlico Prime Minister, that's his view, but it's certainly not my view.
Yeah,
Fair play,
he's
Lizzie. Well done.
On the far end, I guess. Charlie Mullin says you don't want people walking out about and about in the streets.
Oh, fair play, Jeremy. Actually, he actually told him that he said that. Fair
That
play,
would be
dude.
a bit difficult.
Yeah, and what do you think? Because that's
Here we go. Hang on.
The Second World War, checking your papers, aren't we?
Yeah, and I've always been against that, but then these are extraordinary times. Can I?
And the Nazi cubic zirconia. Literal. And the little Nazi.
Oh, Sarah,
I'm going to have to listen to what she says.
War, checking your papers, aren't we?
yeah, and I've always been against that, but then these are extraordinary times.
I was against that, the Jews being asked for their papers or whatever. But, you know, these are... Oh, dear. Really? So Anne's a Nazi?
Can I ask Sarah a medical question about pregnant women? If they do get the vaccine, would they pass on the antibodies to the baby?
That's a really interesting question. We do now know.
Don't tell me that question hadn't been teed up in the ad break. Oh, that's an interesting question there, Anne.
That women who've had infection are showing some signs of passing on the antibodies in their breast milk to their babies, which is really exciting.
Yeah, but that's from actually catching the virus, isn't it? You're talking about from the experimental vaccine.
Fairly early study, but of course we haven't had enough women vaccinated yet to know. We do know, for instance, with whooping cough, fantastic protection to your child. You absolutely pass on the antibodies, and there's no reason to believe that the same wouldn't be true of COVID, but we're still doing the test.
I mean, I don't know whether you can compare whooping cough or what, to be honest, there, but...
It's caused a bit of confusion because pregnant women are not being given the vaccine. People on Twitter and stuff, never a good guide, say...
No, remember, do you not remember what I said at the very start? Remember Jeremy's Twitter poll? Oh, Twitter's good for that. No. What a fucking idiot.
It's not safe for them. It's not that, is it?
No,
It's just not
it's
tested.
absolutely not. So,
Oh.
There's an expression we use in medicine which is absence of evidence is not of benefit, is not evidence of absence. In other words, it's not that we've done it.
That sounds like a fucking whole load of gobbledygook, doesn't it?
So we can't be 100% certain.
Exactly. Well, then answer me this question, Dr. Sarah. Why wouldn't they have invited pregnant women into the trials then? Because it would have made sense, wouldn't it? Because you've also got people like, I know my friend's sister who doesn't want to have the vaccine because she's getting married this year and she wants to be trying to start a family. But they've told people who plan to try starting a family that they probably shouldn't have it. Or have they changed that guidance now?
Do know is that pregnant women in the last trimester, particularly women of BAME origin, particularly older mums, particularly mums who are overweight or have other medical conditions like diabetes, they are at significantly higher risk than they are if they weren't pregnant.
Okay, Storm.
We're going to go to the calls now. We'll speak to Claire from
Oh,
South
good. Let's
Yorkshire,
get some
who
calls.
says
Come on.
unvaccinated are being discriminated against.
Do you
Yay.
think that's going to happen to you, Claire?
Well, at the moment, until everybody else has,
Oh.
everybody's had the opportunity to have a vaccine, I don't
She
think
on the
it
other
should be
day?
compulsory to have the passports and things. I think younger people, they're desperate to get out to the pub and to go back to normal more, and it would be very, very unfair if they're unable to do all of that just because they haven't been offered a vaccine yet.
Well, if we spool forwards to July, and we hope the EU hasn't blocked all of our vaccines, and we get all adults vaccinated.
I suppose that's Brexit's fault, isn't it, Jeremy?
Off the table, don't we? So at that point, it's just people who've got fear of needles and are pregnant or whatever, who haven't got it. Not many.
By then, I'm more in favour of it being compulsory.
What? So I thought Claire was setting out against it, but okay, she thinks it's so she thinks it's unfair to do this until everyone's vaccinated then.
Apart from if you've got a medical reason, I think, then you shouldn't be discriminated against for any medical reason, or if you're pregnant or something. The fear of needles, I think that would be so difficult. Everyone could say, oh, I've got a fear of needles. So I think that would undermine the whole thing if you let people
Well,
off.
you'd have to believe them, wouldn't you?
And
Who are you
other
to
countries
judge
are
them?
doing it through apps, so it isn't that difficult.
Other countries? What, you mean all the other countries that aren't rolling out as fast as us for some reason?
Probably a bit like the track and trace thing where you've got the QR code or you've got
Yeah, 37 million down the drain, Claire. Yeah, let's do that.
About doing it on the NHS app and on patient access, we're looking at whether or not it's possible to do that, because you could upload a positive antibody test, you could upload evidence of vaccination, or you could upload your most recent negative test.
What about people that don't have smartphones?
That's true, most of them don't go out. About 90% of people have smartphones.
But that's the older
now.
generation predominantly that are vaccinated, so
Yep.
Yeah, well,
There are other ways of proving you're vaccinated.
Oh, for God's sake.
One thing we'll talk about maybe is within families, Christmas dinner, and you've got two people who won't have a vaccine.
yes,
Look,
yeah,
no, come in.
no,
Look, in the garden.
There you go.
Sure.
Marcia has sent us in a message that says
There you go.
racism has happened civil liberties. We
Yeah,
can't
he must have
all
Marcia.
have the vaccine, and we may not want it for various reasons. What happened to our freedom of choice?
Well, for that, you got to stand up and take your freedom back, I'm afraid.
Captain says, irrespective of what we want, it's likely that we will be required to travel whilst the virus is a global problem. It would make sense to issue everyone who has a vaccine a certificate automatically.
Okay.
Thank
you. Cheers.
How dare you have a glass of water during
It
the
is
show?
only. But now your calls on whether vaccine passports should be used everywhere.
Here we
by
go. Let's see who
everyone,
calls in.
That's about as wide as we can go. Storm.
We're going to speak to Charlie now from Hampshire, who thinks there's no reason
Charlie?
to get
It's not
vaccinated.
fucking Pimco Plumbers, is it?
So Charlie, not needle phobia or anything like that.
Well, I mean, those that have got needle phobia, I know a few people myself, and they've been able to have certain measures put in place to be able to alleviate their stresses.
Okay, well, gosh, what such as what?
Small steps, really, that they'll get last appointment of the day, for example, and they'll put measures in, make sure everything's calm for them, and they're able to go ahead and have that inoculation done in peace. I just think that really, this is one of them things where we're having to have it done for the good of everyone. And as young children and babies, we get vaccinated for things for the good of everyone, against our will, even though we're only babies. And this is no
Yeah,
different.
your parents
I think we
give
all
permission
owe it
for
to
that,
one
though, don't they?
ourselves.
You know, because when you're a child, you're not
From
actually
your point of view, you need
legally.
a
You don't
really,
make
really
certain
good
decisions for
reason
yourself, do
not
you?
to get vaccinated. You may not even be one. And B, once you're vaccinated, yes, you can move around outside and go to the theatre. And if you're not vaccinated, you can't.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, it's not fair on those that have been.
Boom, there you
They're
go.
having to be around others
Charlie's
that
another Nazi
potentially
then.
haven't been, and they're still being put at risk. Because remember, the vaccine itself doesn't give you 100% immunity. It just gives you a significant immunity.
Ooh,
And if
what's that
you're
look to there?
around people that haven't been vaccinated, then your
What's that,
risk of
Jeremy
catching
Isher?
it still is being increased.
Sure, Charlie, thank you. And the great thing about this, I know you're all sort of fighting shy of this certificate thing, but the fact is, once you bring it in, there's going to be lines of people saying, "Oh, I've changed my mind. I want the vaccine now."
Yes, that's why I think the mood will change. As soon as we get the feeling that we can actually go to the pub down the road or the restaurant of our choice,
These people
but
actually
they will
serious?
require you to bring proof of vaccination or a negative test, then I think the public mood will change. We'll start to get used to that too. And I
Oh
just
dear.
think that it's such an extraordinary business, this pandemic, and lots of experts are saying we may face future pandemics, that perhaps we have to embrace this one and make it work.
We've got this Charlie.
Oh
line,
dear,
I just want
dear,
to show you the
dear,
second
dear.
part of it. I don't know if we've got it. We haven't got it. We haven't got it yet. We're just trying to.
Oh, they are going to show it then.
Storm.
Why?
We're going to go back to calls then and speak
We
to
don't
Bill
wanna
from
see him.
Glasgow, who says this will impact on people's right to freedom.
Go on, Bill.
Go on, Bill.
Hello. Yes, although in general I agree that a passport's a good idea, there are genuinely people in the UK who cannot get an injection. There are certainly people who are phobic, but for example, my daughter, who is in her mid-30s with learning difficulties, you simply physically cannot inject her. She would not accept an injection. And I understand England and Wales are pasting patches. And the sooner they come on board, the better.
Oh
Because we had
God.
to refuse my daughter's injection.
The smart
but
patches.
She simply would not take it.
Listen, Bill, have a look because I'm just going to show you the second part of what Charlie Mullins
Oh,
said.
do we have
just
to?
have a listen. I'll get your reaction.
Without proof of the vaccine, you can't go into a pub, club, restaurant, gymnasium, anywhere at all. You can't travel, theatre. You can't even go into work. I mean, personally, I have to say, I don't even think that we should allow people on the streets unless they've had the vaccine.
Tell your reaction.
That is simply draconian because there are
What a
people who
knobhead.
cannot have
Charlie
an
Mullins
injection
knobhead.
at this moment in time. And I believe that the authorities have to look at an alternative delivery method to ensure that these people can get covered. we're concerned.
But what about people that don't want to have an injection, but because it's their body, their choice?
No proper delivery for it.
Sarah, what's
And I'm sure-
just one second. If somebody really has to be injected and they have complete and utter panic and maybe even an inability to understand the situation, what do you do?
Well, the answer is you can't force somebody like that because it's physically impossible. I've got huge sympathy for you.
You can't
Bill,
force
because
anyone.
I
What are you
know that
talking
people with
about?
learning disabilities have really struggled and have been more affected during the pandemic. The good news is there are trials going on a nasal spray. So there is an
Oh, of course,
alternative, I think,
yes.
which may happen. We know that we have it for flu for kids.
So,
Yeah.
Lizzie, just going back to Charlie Mullins.
Always comparing to flu.
He's going even further. He's
Go on,
saying
Lizzie,
you can't
rip
even
him.
walk down the street if you haven't got a
Sorry.
certificate.
Rip him a new one, Lizzie.
Plumbers, but I do not
What?
agree with you, Charlie. If you're watching, this is draconian. You cannot force people to have this vaccine. I'm sorry. We live in a free society. We have choice. It is. I agree with Bill, the caller. Totally draconian. And
Welcome to the
you know
Communist
what?
Party
Some
of
people
Britain.
Can't have the injection, as he spoke about, and people do have real phobias as well, and we can't enforce this. That's not how we live. We're a country of freedom and have choice. I'm sorry.
Well,
Illusion.
Yes,
Illusion
no.
of choice.
Let's imagine your Christmas dinner, Lizzie.
Oh,
15 people are coming to your cottage. There.
how do you know you're going to be allowed 15 this Christmas, Jeremy? You weren't allowed anyone last Christmas.
I don't know. Hang on, Sarah, hang on. And two of them say, by the way, we hope you don't mind. And you're thinking, it's what's coming. It's going to be they don't drink or something. They say, we haven't had the vaccine, but we haven't got a cough. We think we're fine. Now, do you bar them?
No.
I wouldn't bar them, no. I wouldn't. If they've been sensible and taken the precautions and everyone else has had the vaccine, no, I wouldn't bar my own family members. No, I wouldn't. I think we've spent a year apart from each other. I haven't seen my mother for a year, haven't seen my eldest son since before Christmas. I certainly wouldn't, Jeremy.
You bar the
really want us
vaccine
to
denier in your own family. Would you, Storm?
Well, no, I wouldn't bar anybody if they didn't have it, purely on the basis that if you haven't had it, you're taking the risk on yourself. Although you can spread it, if you've been vaccinated, you're less likely to have a severe reaction, and therefore the chances of death, which is the thing that none of us want, is very,
Skim
very
over
slim.
the
So
fact that you
actually,
can still
if you're
catch
not
it though
getting
there.
vaccinated, you're taking that risk on yourself.
Yeah, there you go.
There is now evidence that you're 2/3 less likely to spread it to other people. I think
2/3
that's
less
really
likely, okay.
If you're spreading it, you're
Go on,
spreading
Sarah, you want to come in on?
I wanted to ask Lizzie, if you've got a surgeon operating,
I noticed-
whether it's, as you say, you can't
Stop.
move your forehead or otherwise.
Be fair play to Storm there. I thought she was making some good points, but yeah, Dr. Sarah's just like cut her off there. Lip beer neck. Okay.
If you've got a surgeon operating on you, and you said it, and they haven't got, and they haven't been vaccinated against hepatitis B, they could put you at risk of, especially if there's any blood-to-blood contact, bodily fluid contact.
Now you see. Why are you even making that comparison? It's like saying if he was HIV positive, would you let him? What? What are you talking about, Dr. Sarah? I more and more think that this woman isn't an actual doctor. She needs investigating.
They could put you at risk of a condition for which there is no cure, which can cause cirrhosis and liver cancer. Do you think it's okay for them to say, I want to keep operating on people, but I don't want
Come
to
on,
have
Lizzie,
a hepatitis
call her out.
B vaccine?
No, Sarah, I obviously we want all want to be safe as possible. But my point is, you can't enforce. Obviously, my friend works in a care
Oh,
home,
Lizzie.
and she's saying how important
You missed
she's vaccinated because obviously.
You missed the point, Lizzie. She compared flipping COVID injection to a hepatitis injection, Lizzie.
Vaccinated to be extra safe, obviously. But I'm just saying you can't enforce this. We don't live in a draconian society.
In surgery, it is enforced. That's Sarah's point.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. One more call.
I'm going to speak to Lawrence now from Kent, who says compulsory vaccine passports are the right way to go.
So
Oh,
you think
God.
Charlie Mullins has got it bang on, Lawrence?
Yes, but I do think it's unfair because obviously younger people, who are the ones.
I agree with Charlie from Pimlico Plumbers, but I don't think it's fair. What?
Who really want to go out, have to wait a much longer before they can go out, etc. Which means they're going to break it. They're going to go against it. Because they want their freedom, and the whole vaccine program gets blown to bits.
Oh, for
Yes,
God's
and
sake.
in the early stages, you would have pubs, theatres, and so on full of mainly older people. Because that means, I mean, you'd have a reduction in violence for a start.
What?
There'd be less fighting.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
for God's
I
sake,
think the
Jeremy.
way to go, quite frankly, is a continuous testing process.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence. Very
Oh,
much indeed.
flipping hell,
Any
Lawrence.
social media, Storm?
Yes, we certainly do.
What the
Nikki
hell,
says nobody
Lawrence?
grumbles at having vaccinations for travelling abroad. They accept that. It protects them. They accept that it protects them from
So many
illness and
people.
disease.
Whoosh.
Why should
Nikki.
this feel
Oh,
any
whoosh.
different? And Wayne thinks that if that is what it will take for us to be able to get around as freely as possible
Oh
during
my
the virus
God.
outbreak, then so be it.
Okay, thanks for your calls on this later.
Well, if those last two comments from those last two people didn't depress you, I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, this is obviously only a small demographic. I don't even know how many people really view and interact this piece of shit. I only watch this first section because it's usually good for me to get a rant out and get out on YouTube for you guys to have a laugh at. But there we go. The COVID passport debate is over. Jeremy Vine's show agrees with basically that Charlie Mullins. They basically back Pimlico plumbers then. Good to know. Oh well, that's it. This has gone on for ages. Probably bored most of you. If you've made it to this point, thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Peace out.